So there's this television show on, it's called Breaking Bad, and it's about a high school chemistry teacher who used to be a chemist in higher learning, but now he's a high school chemistry teacher, and it turns out that he has lung cancer. And so for fear of his family's finances, he then starts discovering ways that he can then cook crack cocaine. So he starts doing that, and his family just gets worse and worse, and the situations get worse, and his crimes get more serious. And so the show is called Breaking Bad because he's going from one bad habit to another, and it's just getting worse and worse. And so what I want to talk about today is bad habits, negative behavior patterns, or even good things that can become bad habits. Like the internet's a good thing, but we can waste all kinds of time on it, looking at Facebook, Twitter, Hulu, or, there's all kinds of ways, all kinds of bad habits that we can engage in. And I'm going to give you some. I'm going to list some bad habits that we have. But I don't want you to hear this list of bad habits and say, oh man, yeah, that's me, and all this kind of thing. I want to list this list of bad habits so that when you hear one of them that might relate to you, that you would expect Christ to break that habit for you. So I'm not reading this list for you to feel bad. I'm reading this list for you to exercise faith. So I'm going to read this list of bad habits, and then we're going to listen to John, who's going to tell us how not to sin. And I think you'll find it really interesting, the ways that he says that you can avoid sinning. So some of the bad habits maybe you struggle with, or others, and I've struggled with, is worrying about things that can go wrong. If you're always worrying about what can go wrong, that's not a good habit to be in. That's being anxious. Worrying about this virus, or worrying about your health, or worrying about your finances. If you're always worrying about something, that's not a good habit. It's a bad habit. Overeating, overspending, not getting enough sleep on a regular basis, not giving yourself that time to rest. Talking too much can be a bad habit. Emotional eating can be a bad habit. Or it is a bad habit. Eating too much fast food. I mean, you can be enjoying it, but eating it too often is a bad habit. Or procrastinating, right? We put things off and when we really should get them done. Shading the truth, telling lies, spinning a tale, not quite telling people everything, not being honest, bragging about yourself or bragging about others in a way that is looked to build them up or build you up, complaining about your spouse, comparing yourself or comparing others with yourself. These are not good habits to be in. Refusing to rest, overcommitting, sitting all day at your desk and never taking a break, emotional shopping, going to Starbucks twice a day, once a day maybe, but twice a day, having no budget. I mean, these are all habits that can take over our lives, and the Bible speaks about this kind of back and forth trouble that we have with wanting to do what's right but not able to do what's right often. In fact, before I look at 1 John, I want to read something to you. Paul understood this, and this is what he says about this struggle, this going back and forth with knowing the right thing to do but not doing it. He says this, "For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh, for I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inner being. But I see in my members another law waging war against the law of my mind and making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched man I am. So clearly Paul understands the struggle with evil, the struggle with bad habits. And I think John does as well. In fact, in 1 John, this John, by the way, is somebody, he spent 3.5 years with Jesus. He saw a spiritual man for 3.5 years. And he's writing a letter to a church to tell them how not to sin. And so, let me answer this question. I'm going to answer this question. What are 3 ways we can be breaking bad habits? 3 ways of breaking bad habits. Well, the reason I bring that up is because John actually says these words. My little children, I am writing these things to you so that you may not sin. In other words, 1 John is written so that you may not sin. So what are the 3 ways that John is giving for us to not sin? Well, the first one is to know the message. Know the message. What message? This is the message, John says in 1 John 1:5. We have heard from him and proclaimed to you that God is light and in him is no darkness at all. So here's the message. The message is God has spoken. God has communicated himself to mankind. And this is what he says. God is light. Now, what does that mean? It means that God exposes sin, but it also means that he extinguishes sin. He removes sin. The light is the fact that Jesus came, taught about who God was, went to the cross, and died for our sins. He called himself the light of the world. And he died for the darkness of the world, for my sin. And so, because he died, I'm free from sin. And so, the good news is that we have this message from God who talks to us about the light. He talks to us about what we should know. Light has the idea of not just light in opposite of darkness in terms of just the light itself and the darkness itself. Light conveys the idea of knowledge, and darkness conveys the idea of ignorance. And so if God is light, and there's no darkness in him at all, there's nothing he doesn't know. He is not ignorant about anything, including my bad habits, my sin. And so the first thing that will help us break bad habits is recognizing that God is without sin and knows everything and is speaking. And he's actually going to tell us how he dealt with our sin. That's what he's going to tell us. That's what he has told us. See, the way he's dealt with your sin is that he has taken away the penalty. He enacted the penalty on Jesus Christ, the penalty of sin. Jesus was judged for your sin. And in so doing, he has now broken the power of sin in your life. And in breaking the power of sin in your life, you are free now not to sin. So there's these 3 things. There's the penalty of sin, there's the power of sin, and there's the presence of sin. Right now, the presence of sin is still in your life. But the way you combat that presence of sin is with God's message. You need to believe that God is light and in him is no darkness at all. He sees your sin, but he also exposes it and destroys it. He reveals it to you so that you can see that it's there, so that you can look to him to take it away. So these habits we've been listing here, that's what you should be expecting. You should be expecting God to both expose the habits for what they are and free you from them. So what I want you to do as a result of this is I want you to pray. I want you to pray and ask God to not just expose your sin, because that's not the best part. The fact that you see it and can't do anything about it can be quite discouraging. But what you'll ask is that, God, would you expose my sin, but would you also empower me, enlighten me, because you're all-knowing, on how I, in my particular situation, with my personality and my disposition, how you can enable me, how I can trust you to help me stop overeating, to help me stop procrastinating, to help me stop getting caught up in things that are a waste of time, to stop doing even more serious sins. Because God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. And so the way that he breaks your habits, notice, he's the one who's breaking them. He's the one who shows you you have them, and then he's the one who gets the glory for taking it away. So trust the God who is light to break your bad habits.